Ahoy, Dune fans!
I was into the
Welcome
music.
to Doug's awesome singing. And we're
Okay.
going to talk about our reaction to Dune Part 2. So if you have any comments throughout this live stream, throw them up. We will talk about them, maybe put them on the screen. We have dove into the inspiration behind Frank Herbert's novels. So we're going to talk about some of the things that inspired him to write the Dune books that made their way into this film, so we can understand the film on a deeper level, because there are a lot of metaphors here that you might not catch unless you're really familiar with some of the politics that Frank Herbert was looking at when he was writing ancient religions, desert religions, and things like that. So without any further ado, let us dive in. I saw the movie on Friday. You guys had a strange theater experience. Do you want to mention what happened in your theater?
The other side of the political side was trying to mess with us. That's why they let the lights on, kind of like with that other movie.
You said you couldn't see anything on the screen, right?
Yeah, nothing political about it. Yeah, they had trouble dimming the lights in our theater. So there were many parts of the screen that were tough to see, especially when it was night out, which was probably about 33% of the movie. And then there was one light right up here that wouldn't go down. It just kind of shined into the corner of my left eye and bugged me the entire movie. So, I mean, it was still a good movie. I'm not gonna, take away from that, but I need to see it again in a theater because it was, I don't want to say ruined, but it took away from it. I missed a lot of stuff because I was out talking to them, trying to get the lights off. So.
Man, that is a bummer, because I left the theater thinking, man, I should have seen this in IMAX.
Yeah, that's
of all
probably
the
what I'm
movies
going
to
to do.
see and have trouble seeing the screen, this is one that you kind of want to be able to see everything. It is pretty gorgeous. Drew, you said that this movie was fairly cheap. It did not look it. What did you find?
Well, actually, Doug actually found that, but he's got
the numbers.
It's like 200. We'll just all ballpark it.
Yeah.
For both of these movies, it costs like 290 million.
297 is what I've heard. I did look it up. Part 2 only costs 180 million.
180 million,
which seems like a lot.
It does, but when you take in consideration the cast and the special effects and all of that goes into it, that's pretty cheap for a big blockbuster movie. But 297 million to make both of those. And what was Captain Marvel came in at like 180 million. 280 million. So 17 million more to make these two movies
over 5.5 hours.
Yep. For
that's
an hour and
crazy
a half
to me.
long.
So I thought these movies looked better than some Marvel films. Maybe not the best of the Marvel films, but I can't think of anything they could have made look better in this film to me.
Yeah, that was the big thing, is even though we couldn't see half the movie, the part we could see, it wasn't like, oh, that's kind of cool. I mean, it's, you couldn't sit there and be like, oh, look, that's kind of crappy effects or anything. When those ships came down, when those blob fireworks were going off, just everything looked perfect. And it was like, this is not CGI. This is really happening. This is the real world. It felt a lot like that while watching it. They did perfect.
Yeah.
The sound design was amazing.
Yeah. Even the littlest things, like when I was thinking about it during the movie, but like every little movement has a sound. It's like when those thumpers, they go down, it's like boom. But when they come up, they have that sound. Obviously I can't do it, but just every little thing had a different sound than you would hear here on Earth. It just a little bit different, and it made sense, and it sounded cool. Even tools they were using, and just one little, just everything. They really put time and effort into the sound and special effects.
The guns sounded terrifying. Like those big ships, when they were firing, I mean, it didn't sound like a Star Wars ship. It sounded like a deep, terrifying rumble. I loved it.
It felt like maybe what a huge pirate ship would sound like or something like that. You know, they weren't shooting them with lasers or futuristic whatever. They were shooting them with cannons, and they had thousands of them just going, just yeah. And then even their handheld guns, you know, like the sniper, kind of sounds silenced a little bit, but still they had a different sound than what a bullet would sound like on Earth. So it just those little changes made it more fun.
And not cartoony either. Like gritty sound.
Yeah. It's something that sounds like something somebody could make today. You know, not pew pew.
Like an actual war in space.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you guys, I think when we discussed part 1, we thought, you know, Paul's character wasn't super developed, but when we catch up with him at the beginning of this film, I was just wondering what your reaction was to his character and how he interacted with other people. Like, were you more pulled in this film by where we find Paul than you were in the first film?
Yes. I made it no secret that the first film didn't really do it for me. I thought it was long. I thought it was kind of boring. I thought it was a little slow. And I understand they're building it up and they're setting up the world, but it's a long time to sit there and just like, let's just get on with it. What are we doing? Let's get to it. This movie just doesn't waste time doing that. It's like, all right, here, this is who he is. And they get to it and they move, and you can see him getting more powerful and getting understanding of who he is and what he has to do. And I thought that's a little bit more, I mean, it held my attention a lot more. Like this one, I had absolutely no problem with. And it was entertaining. It was interesting to see him and how even his personality changes a little bit from the first one to this one. Like this one, he gets in his mind, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, and he takes charge. And it was really cool to see.
Yeah.
And throughout the movie, you can see him evolving in that as well, because, you know, at the beginning, he's all about Chani, Zendaya's character. And I'm going to be with you forever and this and that. But then as the movie goes on, you can see them just separating a little bit. And it's not like anyone's doing anything wrong. It's just that, okay, we're in war right now and I'm supposed to be the leader. I need to take a step back and I'm going to focus more on my duties on this and everything. And then he evolves a little bit more to the point where he's finally ready to make that sacrifice as the leader to bring everything together. And I don't know what happens next in the franchise because I've only seen the 85 Dune and this is where it ends. So I'm kind of curious, you know, unless you're a reader, you don't know where the story is going now. So, you know, we'll see why he's making these decisions, but you know, you see him become a prince, but now he's growing into a king. And it's like, I've got to push away my, I guess not earthly, but my human desires or whatever he is. And, you know, do what I'm supposed to do now. I need to be a leader. I need to make things better here for these people. And to do that, I got to put my love life aside and focus on this. And
she was not happy about that either.
No, she
wasn't.
I don't blame her.
Yes and no. I mean, it's hard. I'm kind of split. I see both sides, but you know, at some point it's like, okay, I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, but if I do, this world may not be saved. And millions of my people will die and not have water. But if I give up this love life, he may be able to take it further. And then someday my people will have water here again. We can have oceans and stuff like that. So how do you make that decision?
Yeah, he was putting the needs of the many over the needs of the few. That's as Spock would say in Star Trek.
Right?
The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah, there's so many with that. So again, it's like I see both sides of that situation. Now, if he has some, this is what I'm wondering, if he has some kind of plan where marrying her will make this happen, which will make this happen. Therefore, now I can go back and be with you. If that's the case, that's something I hate in movies. He should tell her this. It's like, look, I need to marry her now because of this. And then this is going to happen. And if everything works out right, give me a handful of years and I'll come back for you. And then we can be together forever and your people will be safe.
See, I don't know if he can, because okay, so I don't know if what he saw in the first movie when she stabs him, when Chani stabs him, I don't know if that was a possible reality, because I don't know the books beyond this either. If that's a possible reality, or if that's the reality that must happen. And if it's the one that must happen, then he has to let her be angry. Maybe she stabs him. I don't know if he lives or dies, but maybe somehow that results in the saving of the people. Because, I mean, if you look at Paul, like, he is a Messiah figure, and this is inspired by ancient religion. So you have to look at it like he's somewhat of a Jesus figure. Now, he's going to be a more flawed Jesus figure. He's not portrayed as God, but he has divine knowledge that he gets in this film. He is the chosen one, right? So it's interesting because he didn't really show his hand. Like, we don't know exactly what he's thinking just from watching this movie. And we don't know, like, if he knows that he must be killed, because if he knows that, or must be stabbed or something, then he's basically playing out a version of a Jesus figure story. You see what I mean?
True.
Because his cross to bear is getting stabbed by the person he loves. So I will be curious. Was that a glimpse that can be prevented? Because I could see a path where he couldn't tell her, because if he did, then what needs to happen wouldn't happen. And that's one of the things I was thinking when I left the theater. I'm like, I don't really know. They did a good job of concealing which way this is going to go.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it's a good way to look at it. It's very Doctor Strange in-game type thing. I can't tell you what's going on, but if I tell you, it's not going to happen, or which
this movie
they would have
does that
taken
better,
from that.
though.
Oh yeah,
like if that is the route that what we saw in part one, those glimpses, if that's what's going to happen, then there's a reason for them not telling him, as opposed to the Doctor Strange situation in Infinity War, which I love that movie, by the way. But saying.
But yeah, it's totally two different stories. This comic book novel, I mean, they're both deep stories. Don't get me wrong. I'm not picking sides, but this one is a little more something.
So let's move into an interesting character in the film. It's kind of like how in Batman movies, the Batmobile is a character. Well, in this movie, I thought the sandworms were more of a character than the first film. So what was your reaction to them here? You kind of see a little different side of the sandworms.
Yeah, I guess, again, if you haven't read the book or seen the original movie, they kind of, I don't know. It's not that, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not that exciting. It's not that, big. I mean, when he called his worm and it's like the mega worm and everything, that was kind of cool. But you hear them talking about riding sandworms once or twice, I think in the first movie. They mention it here, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm riding a sandworm. You see Stilgar out there doing it. It's like, that took away from the, because in the original movie, they talk about it and it's like, oh, that's crazy and blah, blah, blah. And then they actually show them running up on the side of the sandworms and doing this and everything. This is how you do it. And
using
in this one, in this one, and it's still cool, how they do it, it's still cool and everything, but you didn't get that cool thing on I don't know how I'm trying to explain this. Sorry.
Were they still scary after seeing that
a little
at
bit?
The beginning?
Yeah. but then all of a sudden it's just like, we ride sandworms. Look, and then there's Stilgar going on a sandworm. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I guess they're not these crazy creatures that eat everything, and they got to be coughing a lot because they put down a lot of sand.
A lot of sand.
But anyway, yeah, it was just like, oh, there it is. Where in the first one, they showed this dramatic scene and the running and I'm falling and everything like that. I wish they would have presented it a little bit more pomp, I guess. That's what I was looking for. Again, it's a pet peeve picky thing. Doesn't take away from the movie at all, but
yeah. I
mean, it was amazing that they could
do it.
Oh, go ahead.
Pretty cool. I'd say watching Paul do it for the first time and watching how he jumps on it was a really cool. I mean, it's a really cool scene to see how he gets on it, how he's got to fight to stay on, and the sand's blown in your face. I would have fallen off immediately. But I mean, it was neat. But as Doug said, in the first one, there are these very mysterious creatures, and you're terrified. You don't want to get close to one. And then they didn't really build that up. And this one is just like Doug said, next thing you know, they're just riding them like they're horses.
And that's kind of what they,
not so scary anymore.
Yeah. They're either horses or they're bulls. Right. Basically. Either you're riding them or they're calling them to come destroy everything. It's like going into a China
bull in a China shop.
Yeah, China shop, and just calling in 10 bulls and being like, hey, go. So yeah, they were characters, but they didn't, it's like Silver was a character in the Lone Ranger. Basically.
I thought it was amazing that they were able to make Paul's worm that he rode terrifying after we saw like a cartoonified one that Stilgar was riding. Because then when he called that huge worm, as that was like rumbling up. I mean, some of it was the sound design, but I was like, whoa.
Yeah. And it was done a lot better than the 1984 version of them riding a worm.
But the 1984 version
talk about next week, right?
The best they can do.
But it's almost hilarious though. Like compared to like what you just saw in this. And had I seen this part first and then went back and watched the 84 for the first time, and saw, I would have been like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely horrendous. But it's just, you got Captain Picard up on top of one, and they're all just, I mean, they're not even fighting for their lives to stay on. They're just kind of like riding it like they're just trotting down the street. But so, yes, very well done with this one. It was a lot better, but they could have built it up a little bit more.
I think there is a reason that they show them riding the sandworms. Like Frank Herbert was trying to comment on man's relationship with nature. We kind of touched on that a little bit when we talked about the first film. But I think here you see that the sandworms can be dangerous and like nature can kill you. But then when they're riding the sandworms, I think that's supposed to kind of show them conquering nature, like them. I mean, Frank Herbert in an interview said something about basically in the West, if we want to conquer something, like we look at the world as like something to be beaten into submission. There's nothing we can't conquer, right? So if you look at the film that way and then you see them riding those sandworms, they've taken a dangerous thing and made it into like a plaything. I think that's kind of what they were going for. But at the same time, Frank Herbert, he was really into ancient desert religions when he wrote this, and the science of sand dunes, which he compared to ocean waves. He said they behave the same way as ocean waves. Well, in ancient religions in the desert, I mean, you've got Judaism, you've got Sumerians, Mesopotamians, Babylonians, all of them. In the ancient world, there was this metaphor for chaos, and it was a sea dragon. So in this film, I think Frank Herbert made the sandworms the sea dragon of this universe, especially because at the beginning of the first film, he opens the film with this text on the screen. It says, "Dreams are messages from the deep." Well, the deep was the name of the sea dragon in Babylonian mythology, right?
Yeah.
So I think he took that idea from religion and put it in this film. So I think from that, the sandworms represent chaos. And I don't know, what does that tell you? What does that kind of like unlock about the story?
I don't know. You could look at it as chaos in normal life that we deal with every day, and we got to stop letting it run over us and chase us down, or we got to stop avoiding it and just grab it by the neck or take a couple hooks into it or something, hold on tight. Goes all the way back to I'm not going to make that quote, but anyway, when something comes along important, you got to grab it with both hands and hold on tight. I did the quote anyhow.
Write it like a sandworm,
I guess.
Right. Yeah. I think it's also you have to respect nature. I think it's once you, you go out in like elements. It could be like, I don't know, if you're climbing a mountain, right? Something dangerous. It's something dangerous to do. But if you respect the danger and understand the danger, then you can actually work with it. You can accomplish something by, understanding what it is that you're working with. So with these worms, yeah, they're extremely dangerous things, but you have to respect that danger and understand that, if things don't go well, this could really end up bad for us. But they've taken those precautions on how to do it instead of just, it's something like that. That's what I'm kind of going with.
I love that because it's like a two-sided coin. Like on the one hand, it can be fun. On the other hand, it can kill you, or it can get out of hand real fast.
Right. So you just have to respect your surroundings. You have to understand your surroundings. And, I think that's kind of what, in a way, what those sandworms could represent. It is a danger that's there, but at the same time,
That's very much in line with what Frank Herbert said in some of his interviews. I listened to like an hour-long interview where he was interviewed about the books and what they meant. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So next question. The Bene Gesserit. What did you think of them in this film? Do you think they're good or evil? Like, I mean, particularly like Paul's mom. Like, I couldn't really tell which way she was going in this film. Do you think their group is corrupt and evil, or what do you think?
I think they believe they're doing the right thing and they're being good, but I don't know. Is there at the same time they're making the wrong decisions? Maybe, you could look at that as, the inclusivity of this is just supposed to be a girls' club. Like when he there towards the end when he's talking to the group and he breaks out the voice on that Bene Gesserit woman, she sits down, she's like, blasphemy. It's like, you could look at it like the boys' clubs of the past where, it's like, this is where the men hang out. Women aren't supposed to be here. And then the one woman makes their way in. Or you could go even further with, back to the 50s. And it's like only white people can sit up front. And then Rosa Parks comes in and sits up front. You could look at it as something that was only meant for one typical person, one typical whatever, and it's breaking that up and being like, no, it's not just you, it can be everyone. So that's one way you could look at it, possibly.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
There's a lot of places like that still today when you have some people who are stuck in their ways and this is the way it's always been and the way it's always got to be, and they're not really quite open to a change or a new perspective. And you see that all the time too.
I almost think they're modeled after the Jewish council, like from Jesus's time. It's called the Sanhedrin, but in the first scene where you see the Bene Gesserit in this movie, and they're all sitting in kind of a circle, in the Fremen camp. Like I thought with the way they're sitting, the way they're portrayed is exactly like the portrayal I've seen of the Jewish council, like the council that crucified Jesus. Okay. And they had people on that council who were good and corrupt. And especially when that scene you mentioned when like who it's Paul throws his voice at a one of the women leaders, right? One of the reverends.
Mhm.
When she said blasphemy, I'm like, oh, that is almost a scene out of the New Testament. So I could see a lot of parallels there. I think that was partially intentional, especially after what Frank Herbert said about the desert religions being an inspiration here.
Mhm.
But he did want to comment on religion, and he believed it could be a positive thing when people were thinking about each other, and it could benefit people, right? And it could be a good thing when people work together for the benefit of everyone. But when it became this power thing, this corporate thing where it was a little bit more unhealthy, he also wanted to portray what the corruption can do to society. So I think you kind of see that in the film. I almost thought at the first half of the film, Paul is thinking more of like the good of everyone. And he still might be thinking that at the end of the film, but I can't tell like which way is it going. I think he's doing what he knows he has to do, but it does make the audience wonder, did Paul become corrupt by the power or by the knowledge of what he saw in the future? I think that's a really good conflict of storytelling.
I think there's a little bit of revenge in there too.
Yeah, he
I
did say
mean,
that at the beginning, didn't he?
yeah. So I mean, maybe that's his main motivation is, you know what, you killed my dad, you've ruined my family.
Well,
So
Aquaman too.
yeah. So I'm not. Maybe he really doesn't care about anything else. It's just I'm to rub it in to the emperor. Got with who we find out is his grandfather. You killed my family. You did all this stuff to me. So now I'm going to dethrone you. And just to kind of rub it in, I'm going to marry your daughter. So, I mean, that's like, I think at one point, I think it was a lot of it was just having revenge.
But at the same
So,
point, he does need some power because I guess we're going to go into the Holy Wars now.
yes. Yeah. They got
And
everybody else is ready to fight.
so, you know, he's got millions of the desert people, but they don't have ships. They
No.
can't go fight on other planets or do anything like that. So he needs this emperorship so he can now grow and expand his army. And that way he can now be a part of this holy war and do whatever they're going to do. I'm going to have to find these books and read them because I'm sitting here now completely confused because I really thought this is where it was supposed to end. I thought there were going to be 2 parts. And then right before I went to see the movie, everyone's talking about part 3. I'm like, what do you mean part 3? There's only, we're about to the end of it. But like we said, the 84 version didn't end at the end of the books. It just ended at the end of that. So,
yeah. Well, Bill New said that
up.
this is his Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, yeah.
This is his second act. It's darker.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But they end on a positive note. They won. They beat everybody.
Yeah. Just another cliffhanger.
Yeah.
They did, but you almost think, okay, Paul didn't get the girl and he might be evil now, maybe. Like the whole galaxy is coming to, all the other houses are flying to Atreides to try to blow them up, or Arrakis, not Atreides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To blow them up. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot that could be going on with him right now. It could be that he truly wants to lead his people. There could be the revenge factor. There could be that he's now power mad, and so.
And I really want to see what happens with this daughter because, again, in the 84 version, she was there. She was like 5 years old.
That was his sister.
Or that's what I meant.
His sister. Then
his
the first
sister,
one.
the daughter of the mom. Yeah.
Yeah, she's in the 84 version.
Yeah, and she's young and talking and all of that. Where in this one, she's talking, but she's still in the belly. So it's
Except for that one vision that you saw.
Yeah. Which has to be at least, I mean, you got to say at least 15, 16 years into the future.
Yeah.
I mean, the Anna Taylor
Joy.
Joy. Yeah. She's like early 20s. So she doesn't even look like a teenager really, but you could say she's 16 or whatever. So yeah, obviously this story is going to, part 3 is going to be well down the line a little bit, because if she does come out and it's like, hey, I'm here.
Maybe she's just going to be a really angry fetus.
It's possible. Especially if she's mechanical.
Well, on that note, this is a part of the film I thought was really interesting. Like when you see Paul's mom basically get memories downloaded into her head, at that moment, her character kind of changes. I think I mentioned on another movie we were discussing, there's this comic book where Batman, like he gets abducted by some villain, and that villain is trying to make an army of evil Batmen, right? So they try to make Bruce Wayne clones and download all of Batman's memories into the clones, but they can't handle the trauma of all those memories in that time, so they claw their eyes out. So I was watching this scene and I noticed like Paul's mom turns kind of dark, like right after she receives the memories from the Reverend Mother. And Paul, he has a pretty big character change right after that. So I just wondered, like, is there some kind of parallel here where like we can't handle seeing the future, or humans can't handle like the memories of 2 lifetimes because of the level of trauma that would put us through? What do you think happened to them? Did they change?
I mean, if you're seeing all these memories from all these past generations, and there's a lot of trauma and a lot of pain or death or whatever, I'm pretty sure it's going to change you. You're probably not going to be a really upbeat, happy person all the time. You're probably going to turn a little dark.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at it in modern terms, I mean, if you remember, well, maybe not so modern, but do you guys remember when you went to see The Passion at the theater? Or did you go to see The Passion at the theater?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I did.
I went with a group of my friends. Nathan did. When you walked out, I mean, I'm with my buddies Matt and Sean. I think there were a couple. I'm sure Stephanie was there. There were a group of us that went. And, we're always very talkative, very upbeat, and everything like that. Especially when we're together. We walked out of that theater, and I don't even know if we said bye to each other. We were just kind of walking out like, dear God, because it was a very, obviously a traumatic movie. And,
Pretty
when you
gruesome.
think about that and everything. And so just, a 2-hour movie, and we couldn't talk. We walked out and, a couple of us had tears in our eyes, and we're just kind of like, let's see you tomorrow or whatever, and we got in our cars and left. And just that 2-hour movie, how that shut us down for that night. Can you imagine hundreds of years of memories of something that bad, maybe even worse? And just so yeah, when you get all of that laid on you, I mean, it's going to affect you somehow. So
I almost thought like the concept being thrown on screen there is like, can a human handle like seeing what God sees, or like the knowledge of God, where you see everything everyone goes through? I mean,
I wouldn't want it.
Yeah. Or Paul, basically, when he drinks the water of life and he sees into the future, my understanding from the dialogue is he saw like a number of ways that his people are annihilated, or the Fremen, right?
Yeah. That's why I said when he said that,
himself.
he had a Doctor Strange moment. I see all these different, only one possible solution.
Yeah.
So he's Doctor Strange all of a sudden. But
Doctor Strange is Paul.
Infinity War was a spec script for this.
Could be.
Well, and it makes sense. I mean, you're always going to pull from memories or your favorite things. So, the fact that there's some similarities between this makes sense. There's probably other movies out there where it's like, I've seen multiple different things. We got to do this to make this work. And I think there was a Nicolas Cage movie called Next.
I've seen it.
Something like that. It's something similar, right? Where he can see like multiple different outcomes or something. So again, it's pulling from different memories, different movies you love, different books, songs, whatever, to make a story. So, makes sense that a lot of similarities in that.
Well, if you're gonna do it, the way that they did it was a good twist on it. I know this was written, back in like the 50s or 60s, but
60s.
I think if you were going to redo that story where somebody knows what to do, concealing from the audience what they're thinking is the way to go, because then you're like, and I'm wondering, is he actually going to be right? I mean, even though he saw that stuff, what do you mean? What if he takes a misstep? Like, what if he did become power hungry and he blows it somehow? I don't know.
I think that's what he's afraid of. Doesn't he mention that at some point where
He
he's
wouldn't go
just,
south.
yeah.
Yeah, because he thought everybody would die if I go south.
Mhm.
I have to stay here.
So yeah,
But he
that was
didn't-
one of his big fears.
He'd only had the visions at that point, so maybe he drinks the water of life and he sees a way to go south and everyone not die. But I wonder if it's going to cost him his life or not,
Hard to say.
or Chani. Okay, so getting into something interesting here, I'm going to pose a theory. I think, I know Frank Herbert was drawing from desert religions. I think the water of life might actually represent the tree of knowledge from the Adam and Eve story. And there was something from the Mesopotamian story that's like kind of a version of the Adam and Eve story called the Adapa myth. There is something called water of life, and it was the source of immortality. Jesus would talk about himself as the water of life, right? So if you think about the Garden of Eden story, I think this actually might be a key to understanding a part of part 3. Adam and Eve, they chose to eat this fruit from the tree of knowledge, right? So think about this. Paul chooses to drink water from, the spring of life or whatever, to get knowledge, to see the future, right? Well, the whole idea of the tree of knowledge was humans weren't supposed to have that knowledge. If you think about, like when I was a kid, I learned, and my science teacher said something about, don't go throwing any aerosol cans in a bonfire. Like, I was too young to handle that knowledge, because what do you think I did after school? I went and threw an aerosol can in a
I never
bonfire
got any
and
of those
watched
to
it
blow up.
I never tried it.
Yeah, so here you've got Paul, and if you think of Adam and Eve story, man's not supposed to eat from the tree of life, right? Well, in this story, like the Bene Gesserit are all women. Man is not supposed to drink from the water of life or he will die. That's basically the Adam and Eve story, because if man eats of the tree of knowledge, he will die.
Mhm.
So what I'm wondering is it a bad thing that he drank from the water? Like, is this going to cause a problem down the road? Or is it a good thing that he got this future knowledge? Like, can a man handle knowledge of the future?
I see what you're saying. When God said man isn't supposed to eat from the tree of knowledge, he wasn't specifically talking about a male. It was man as a
mankind.
as a race isn't supposed to. So they're saying the same thing. A man, but this meaning gender of man, is not supposed to do it. So I see the parallel there. But I don't know if it's. I don't know. I mean, they said that it was instant death for anybody. Any man who ever tried to this is going to die, and he did not die. So I actually wonder, like, how many times have they actually tried to give it to a man? Maybe that's just something that they said and made up just so they wouldn't want to do it.
Well, that goes along with the, that goes along with the story, or the, there's supposed to be a man who drinks it, survives, and leads the desert people to freedom. So
the prophecies.
Yeah, prophecies. I couldn't think of that word. Long day. So yeah, once he drank it and he survived, that just moves the prophecy forward. So But of course, I mean, again, we don't know what's going to happen in part 3. You can speculate all kinds of different things. What if, Jessica is ultimately evil and she's working for the Bene Gesserit and they're trying to take over the spice trade or want to be the leader of all the families or something like that. And to do that, she needs to do this, have her son do this, and ultimately he will sacrifice himself, thinking he's doing it for the good, but ultimately it's just for the Bene Gesserit to take over everything. And so, you can take it that way. You can go with the happy route that, he's going to do this so he can make this happen and blah, blah, blah. And then he ends up back with Chani at the end and they have water down on the planet. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts still. So I'm really interested. That's why I wanted to say I think I need to read the book so I can figure out what happens next, because I don't know if I want to wait 4 years for another movie.
I didn't leave a lot of other movies like this, like sitting around thinking about what they were going to do in the next one. But this movie, like I just can't wait to see the next one. The last time I felt like that was one of the Dark Knight trilogy movies or Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring or something. So, I mean, that's a pretty high bar.
Mm-hmm.
We all know how I feel about Lord of the Rings, too.
You didn't like
how
Lord
would
of the
you feel
Rings?
about this?
Oh, God, no. I've seen them all one time in the theater, and that's enough for me.
Oh, wow.
I was so bored.
Man.
Oh, man. Nick says he can't go into part 3. It's a spoiler?
Yeah, I think Nick's obviously read the book, so he's going to be here next week, by the way. Any Nick Lemo fans out there? He's going to be live with us next week talking about the 84 version. But that's what he said. So I'm going to say part 3 is going to go well into book 3. Paul marrying the Emperor's daughter ends the book. Dune. Oh, you took it off. Sorry.
He says, sorry, part 3 will go well into book 2.
Oh, there you
Okay,
go.
that's what I thought, because Dune Messiah is book 2.
Is book 2 going to be 2
and
movies?
I know a little bit about that.
I don't know.
Is book 2 going to be 2 movies?
No, and I think this is a planned trilogy, and then the director is planning on stepping away. Of course, they could back up the money truck.
No, we're not doing this.
Oh, the cat fight.
We can't do this without at least Daphne making one appearance. It's just not a Monday night unless Daphne shows up.
Nope.
Do you have a prediction about, is Paul corrupt at the end of the film or not?
He's not going to be.
I don't think he'll be corrupt.
I think, with everything that this author was saying throughout the book, little things here and there, it feels like he still wants to have a happy ending. So, I still think Paul's going to end up with Chani. He's seen visions of water back on Arrakis. So I think there's going to be some situations where you think he's going to be evil or corrupt, and he may do a couple things that it's like, oh, that's bad, but for the ultimate good, I think he's going to be all right.
This is interesting because he's caught in the middle of two groups who have two different kind of messiahs that they're looking for. Because I would say, I don't think the Fremen's idea of the Messiah, I mean, they're like the poor, right? They're nomads. I don't know that their idea of the Messiah is the same as the Bene Gesserits. I don't know about Paul's mom, because I do believe that she does care about Paul. She is caught up in the Bene Gesserit politics a little bit, but like the other Reverend Mother, she definitely seems corrupt, and they're looking for a political Messiah for reasons of gaining power. Whereas the Fremen, yeah, they want someone to free them, but it seems more for means of freedom, not necessarily of making some kind of power gain or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, too, you got to remember that Fade Rotha,
Mhm.
Elvis or whatever.
Elvis.
He was Elvis.
He was, yeah, that was the actor who played Elvis.
Really?
Yeah,
I had no idea.
yeah. If you look at the kid with hair and everything, it's complete transformation. But he got one of the Bene Gesserits pregnant. Though as a lady Margot, she's carrying his child because they were trying to, they're like, oh, well, this, Paul might be the what the prophecy foretold. What we need to do is bring in somebody else to fight that. So now you've got his sister still to be born, but now he's got an enemy possibly as well. So again, I guess that's the question, can you manipulate a prophecy? Because they're obviously trying. So
Yeah, I don't think
still
that
a lot of
counts
moving parts.
personally.
Still a lot of moving parts. I'm not 100% sure where I think this movie's going to go. That's why I want to read the book. So
My guess is he's not going to be corrupt. Like at the end of the movie, I'm going to guess that he's just kind of acting. He's doing what he has to do, but the burden of the knowledge of what will save the people is so heavy. He has to look like a jerk. That's what I'm thinking. Now, there were moments in the film where I kind of doubted that, but I'm going to eke over to he's still good. He's going to have to do some terrible things to accomplish good. And people are going to die, and he's going to have to make a decision and know that's going to happen. Like, imagine being in that position. Like, that is a pretty awful. I think it's a good illustration of what maybe a leader during wartime might actually go through.
yeah, I thought the
Which
exact
I
same
give
thing.
the movie mad props for, like, making me feel that tension. Like, this it's an impossible situation. So he's caught in between these two groups. They both think he's a messiah. He's gonna fail one of them, and then the other one's gonna think he's awesome, or maybe he'll fail them both. I don't know. But I think he says Chani comes around. I believe that, but does that mean he's gonna be what everybody thinks he's gonna be? I don't know.
Hard to tell. Or maybe, maybe it's one of those lessons where it's just like, when you have so many people relying on you, you have to think about yourself first, maybe in a sense. And, maybe all this will happen. And then he's just, you know what? I'm over it. Here are the keys to the world. Do whatever you want. I'm going to go get Zendaya and we're going to go find some water. And, I may end like that, where it's just like, I don't want to be your messiah. I don't want to be your leader. Being a leader can corrupt you. It can make you, you have to make these horrible decisions. Like you said, I mean, can you, when we, World War II, when we went to Normandy, somebody had to make that call and say, okay, we're going to drive these ships and we're going to land right here. And then the doors are going to open. And then everybody who lands first is going to die. So you have to make that decision. That these doors are going to open and that entire boat is just going to get shot down.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's either that or the Nazis take over Europe and then us. So, making those types of decisions. Insane.
I have a friend who I think he said his grandpa landed at Normandy. And I had relatives that landed at Normandy too. But he told me, like, their commander, like, got a gun out and said, hey, you will get off and storm the beach or I will shoot you. And well, that's a pretty uncomfortable situation. So I don't know. Yeah. Something else I was going to say about Paul and I can't remember. Oh yeah. So he takes a pretty sharp character turn when he's like yelling at people at the end and I guess kind of rallying the troops. I can't confident. Say, yeah, he's more confident. I can't say I like that kind of leader. Like, that may not be the best approach, but I think that he's seen that that's what he has to do to get the outcome that they need.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
one of those, I have to become something I don't want to become to save people, I guess.
Well, you get in a leadership position like that, and sometimes it's like, look, I can't be your friend.
Yeah,
Like,
and
you
you
want me
can't
to lead
win.
you, then I'll lead you, but I've got to have the respect, and I've got to have you understand, who I am, and this is what I've got to do to get this done. And if I'm your best friend, I can't send you into battle. I can't order you to go do something.
Yeah,
You
you have to
can't
become
you can't
cold.
do that. You have to separate yourself.
Mhm.
And that's with any type of leadership. If you're, a manager of a store or a company or something like that, you have to separate yourself from those relationships. And that's probably another reason why he kind of backed off, the relationship he was starting up with Johnny, because I might get to a point where I'm going to have to ask you to do something that I don't want to have to ask you to do. But if I've got an attachment to you, I'm not going to be able to do it. I can't lead
Mhm.
the right way.
Yeah. And two, you've got two, if not three groups of people there that are all like this, and let me have my opinion. Let me see. And in some situations, when you're trying to negotiate between two or three or more people, it's like, okay, let me listen to you. Okay, yeah. And then it's just a circle of chaos until somebody, and you see this movies all the time where somebody finally just like, enough. And here's the way it's going to go. You do this, you do this, you do this. Ready? Break. And, so I think it wasn't him becoming mean. It was him being like, okay, you know what? We've had enough talk. This is what's going to happen. All right. I'm going to marry
Mhm.
her. I'm going to take your position. We're going to do this. These guys are going to come down, blah, blah, blah. The end, break. So I don't know if he was turning evil, if more it was just like, this is the way it's going to be. We're not going to discuss it anymore. This is what's going to work. I'm in charge now. Here we go.
Right.
So
I don't feel like he would have done that if he hadn't seen the future. And like, I don't think I could do that unless I had seen how it was going to turn out, you know? Like, I
well,
feel like
again,
that's
yeah,
the
but
burden of what he knows changed his approach, is what I think.
well, I guess that makes sense. We don't have the luxury of knowing what's 15,000 different versions of what could happen in the future. So yeah, it would be much easier, but that's what you have to do sometimes, where it's just like, I want this, and it's like, okay. You know what? We're done. We're doing it this way, and you're both gonna, and you just got to make that decision. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong.
Mhm.
So
And that's why they don't let me on juries.
We do
Oh,
have a
Nick
new
has an
comment,
awesome
by
comment.
the way. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This one.
What happened to the dog in 1984?
it's out into the
It runs
battlefield.
out into the battlefield, Paul. So they're in the 84 version. Paul has a pug dog. And during the major battle, Patrick Stewart, who is well known as Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek, he is he's the same role as Josh Brolin is in this film. So he's the weapon guy.
And he looks
But they're
about the
running-
same age as he does now.
Yeah,
Like,
and
okay.
as they're running onto the battlefield, he's carrying the dog with him.
I don't
into the
remember
battle.
that.
Yeah, and it's like, what? Why? Why are you? Why, don't forget the dog.
I'm gonna look for it because we're talking about that a week from today, next Monday,
Yes, we'll
live,
be
right?
talking about the
Yeah. So if
1984.
you guys see this and you want to
And
hop
Nick
on and
Limo,
talk with us,
vocalist, will be
we will
live
be
with
here probably 8:30 p.m. Central Time next Monday. That would be the 11th,
The
right?
11th.
And Nick's gonna join us. So
Yeah.
that'll be fun. Live discussion.
And I believe Nick's read the books. He's seen the movie multiple times since 1984. Drew and I saw it for the first time like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So he's going to be and I don't, you haven't even watched it yet, have you, Nathan?
No, I know
Yeah.
a little bit about the books, but I've never
Mhm.
seen the original movie. Only
Yeah,
the
it's,
trailer.
It's pretty much, it follows the same. It's pretty much the same story. It's just they shorten a lot of stuff. The special effects are definitely not nearly as good. Sting is in it for a second. I can't think of anything else that's a little different.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
well, again, I think we mentioned this when
different.
we were talking about the first one. It was, and I think it was Nick who told me this, it was done perfectly for 1984.
Yeah.
Because other than Star Wars, there was nothing else that, I mean, they did a really good job with what they had back in the day.
Yeah.
They didn't use models as much like Star Wars did. They did a lot more special effects with early CGI or something like that. But they did a decent job with it,
Mhm.
So
especially
it's not
for it.
torture
I
because
thought it
I've
was
been dreading it.
no, it's
No. Don't dread
it's fun.
it. It's
Okay.
it's a good, it's a decent movie to watch.
Mhm.
I mean, I would sit through 84 Dune again. It sounds like I absolutely hated the new Dune movies. I don't hate the new Dune movies, but
He
I will
hates
sit
them.
and watch. I would sit down and watch the 84 version again before I would watch one of these two.
Oh, even this one.
Yeah, I mean, I like
Oh.
this movie. It was a good movie, but
Oh.
it's not something that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna
Oh
pop it on
man,
every so often.
I can't wait. I've already shown my hand. Well, that will go straight into. I have two wrap-up questions for you, and this
Okay.
one I really wanted to hear Drew's opinion as a Star Wars fan, and also a Star Wars fan who was discouraged by the latest trilogy.
Mhm.
Is Dune the new Star Wars?
No,
No.
they're not going to make
Oh
action
man.
figures. They're not going to have video games. They're not going to make spin-off TV shows. They're not going to do any of that stuff. You cannot
Give it
replace
time.
Star
You
Wars.
never know.
What about as a
They-
movie franchise though?
No,
No, because as amazing as this movie is, it's not doing anything new. See, what makes Star Wars is it's not. I mean, it was a decent story. The acting was average, but it was the special effects. You know, I love the Star Wars stories. Don't take anything away from them, but what made Star Wars was the fact that they made it look so amazing.
Mhm.
And the story was secondary. The acting was way down the line. It was all about how do they do that? I mean, that looks like a freaking X-wing getting blown up by a TIE fighter. I mean, they did that movie perfectly, and that changed Hollywood. You know, it was, we've talked about this in the past where 70s movies are really hard to watch. You know, you go back and you watch movies like Raging Bull, which are classics, but they're hard to watch because it's that 70s feel that just, you know, we've talked about it before, but when Star Wars showed up, it was like, boom, in your face. Special effects, this, that, and it was, and that's why it made so much money in a time period where people had to drive 2, 3, 4 hours just to get to a movie theater. And it
Mhm.
still made sold as many tickets as it did, made as much money. I mean, you know, you look at the highest grossing movies ever, and the original Star Wars is right up there towards the top. And it's been released a couple times, but you got to imagine that, you know, people were paying 50 cents a ticket back in 1977. I know there's websites out there that show how much Star Wars would have made in 2023 ticket prices. I mean, it would have been insane. But yeah, I don't think this is going to be the new Star Wars because it's not. It's given us a great story, but we've seen this movie. It's given us great special effects, but we've seen special effects similar. Now, these are some of the best I've seen in a movie, but I've seen just as good here and there.
Yeah, I would say this. If you want to talk and say the new Star Wars based on the special effects, in a way, I can maybe, if that's what you're saying,
And the sound design, maybe.
possibly, because the sound design was great. The special effects were some of the, like Doug said, some of the best, CG that we've seen. So if that's going to be the new standard of this is what you have to do, in a way, I guess you could say it that way. But if you want to talk about, is this like the next big franchise? Absolutely not, because you can't market this movie to kids. There's no way.
Well, that's true.
You can't. You're, like I said, with Star Wars, you can market to anybody. Adults like it, children like it. You know, you can make toys, you can sell novels, you can sell all this stuff. And with Dune, it's like You're not going to make action figures. You're not going to do all this stuff. Kids aren't going to sit and watch this movie.
What about
There's
will
no
it be
way.
the trilogy we remember in 10 years from the
No,
2020s? No.
I don't think
Oh
so.
man, I think it will be up there. I think if you
I think it's not going to be like Lord of the Rings.
I
Lord of the
I
Rings will
must
be
view this on a different level because I look at the way that they utilized like religion and politics and the narrative, the things they tried to make you think about in the film. Like I know they did this in the book, but the way they were able to put that on screen, I mean, you know, I'm really into like Old Testament, New Testament. Even I study Sumerian religion, Mesopotamian, all that stuff to understand Old Testament stuff. So when I'm sitting there watching this movie, like I'm just like marveled at how they took all these different things and used the imagery. I guess Star
yeah.
Wars did something new by making something called the Force, right? Which was inspired from Eastern religions and Judaism, Buddhism. We talked about what some kind of samurai, right?
Mhm.
So I look at it like, okay, Dune made a rebellion trilogy, a space rebellion trilogy, and they did make it darker, so it's not for kids, but they weaved all these things in here to make you think,
Yeah.
and they did the serious parts of that better than Star Wars did, but Star Wars did the more fun and revolutionary for its time, maybe better. But man,
Yeah.
I thought this movie was a masterpiece. I was compelled by the first one, or by part one, but this one I was just like,
Well,
wow, that I know it's a little slow at times, but it is something to behold.
yeah. I mean, it is very well done. And I know it sounds like I'm totally bagging on it. And I'm not saying I didn't like this movie or enjoy it. They're very well done. But I don't know if this will be the trilogy that everybody remembers, because even right now, Dune 2 is out. And other than the three of us, I don't know anybody else who's seen it.
Oh,
I don't
really?
know anybody else who wants to see it.
I
Like,
know
I
they
don't hear
sold
anybody
out
talking about
IMAX.
it.
Oh, out here I do in
Okay.
Kansas.
Around
Well, I
here, I
mean,
mean, honestly, I don't know anybody who said, "Oh, I can't wait for the new Dune movie to come out."
we were there Sunday. It came out on Friday. We were in the theater on Sunday, and there were what,
10
12
people?
other people in the theater? Yeah. You know, it doesn't have that draw. You know, again, it's not furthering Hollywood type great, like, you know, you had Star Wars. You know, first you could even take it back all the way to Ben-Hur. You know, when Ben-Hur came out, that was this amazing spectacle. It's like, oh my God, they got chariots and people getting run over and this and that. You know, no one had ever seen anything like that before. And then, you know, go through the 60s and 70s, and all of a sudden here comes Star Wars, and it's this amazing, you know, these guys use models and everything, and that looks so real. Up until then, you know, it was the Enterprise on a string going,
Yeah.
wee,
Well, then
you
you
know,
had
so
Jurassic Park come out.
Jurassic Park was probably the next one where the CGI really took hold, and everything like that. And then you
And then
could go
Avatar.
Avatar, exactly. That's the next one. Where in all of these movies, or maybe not Ben-Hur, but with Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Avatar, they've all had success. And then it's like, all right, we had success. Let's continue telling the story. And just like Star Wars, they probably should have stopped at a certain point. But,
Yes.
you know, first off, this is a movie that was done after a movie that's already been around. So you're not surprising people with an interesting story. Now, again, I understand that there's a lot of people who haven't seen the 84 version and everything like that. We hadn't seen it when we watched the first one. But it's been out there. The story's been out there. We've seen amazing special effects in other movies. Now, this may be some of the best we've ever seen, but it's not that they transformed special effects. They just did it well throughout the entire movie, where, you know, you watch a movie like Firefly from almost 20 years ago, it's like, oh, that looks cool. Oh, the way they did that. Oh, that landing was a little bit, but the rest of the movie was great. You know, this movie was there wasn't a part where I was like, that doesn't look too great. Everything looked great,
Right.
minus the night scenes, but that's the theater's fault. But yeah, they're just not giving us anything new to. That's what made Star Wars Star Wars. It was something different. This is something amazing, but I don't think it's different to really bring everyone out. Because like Drew said, if it were one of those movies, then our friends would have been, we would have been texting about it over the weekend. Nick, have you seen this movie yet? Make a comment if you're still on. But he's probably the one person I know who would see this movie.
Speaking of which, he does have a comment, which sounds like the director is going to do this.
Yeah, you did say he's going to leave after part 3. So again, they could expand the universe. They're doing that with Game of Thrones. They're doing that with Lord of the Rings. They're doing that with Star Trek. They did that with Star Trek. Star Trek started off in this generation. Then they're bringing up this one. Then they got this one. Then they went back and did before. And
they're all over.
Yeah. So you can
expand Dune.
You can expand. Yeah, but you'd expand it like you would Star Trek. And as amazing as Star Trek was, Star Trek has never been Star Wars. Star Trek has a lot of following. A lot of people love it. Dune has a big following, has a lot of people who love it. But it's this group where Star Wars grabbed this group, and then this group over here is like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. Look at that, and then Star Wars became everyone's movie.
Yeah. So Dune won't have quite the same audience. It is kind of a specialized.
Yeah, and I think people 10 years from now look back on it and say, no, that was a really good set of movies and that was really well done. But it's not going to have the
impact. It's not going to change anything.
No, and it's not like, it's not going to have the impact that Star Wars had, that Jurassic Park had, that, Lord of the Rings had.
Yeah, see, Nick, he's the guy who I would assume would see Dune 2 immediately. And even he hasn't seen it yet. Now, he is, a professional musician, or a singer, so he was probably busy all weekend singing, but and he's going to see it here soon. But again, it wasn't like I need to make sure I have at least 3 hours off so I can go see this amazing movie that I can't wait for. It's, oh, well, I've seen this. I saw this back in '84, but I'm curious to see what this new one looks like.
I like movies that make you think a lot, and I like movies that utilize suspense. Like one of my favorite TV shows of all time is the Netflix Daredevil series. So for whatever reason, maybe it's the combination of the subject matter. There's just a solid film. And,
100%.
All that. But
again, we're not saying
the series.
Yeah. And I'll straight up go out there and say that this story is better than Star Wars.
Yeah,
the story, but it's not the new Star Wars. You can't be the new Star Wars with just a story, because then because 90% of the amazing movies and stories out there are better than Star Wars. Right. Star Wars was just a political thriller with amazing special effects.
You have to capture the the imagination of people to make it that, Jurassic Park, when we see dinosaurs walking around that weren't animatronics, or they were animatronics, they weren't stop motion, wow, they look real. I mean, that you captured everybody's imagination with that. I'm like, what? Star Wars, people had seen stuff they'd never seen before. So even like Avatar, we had never seen a world look like that. I've seen sand planets. And
well, I mean, Avatar even came out. It came out after the prequels.
Yeah,
and it was
Avatar is
also a game changer. Because we saw a full CGI world in episodes 1, 2, and 3, and it's like those are rough.
Yeah, Avatar looked amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we're saying. This is a really good set of movies, but it's just you're not going to capture my kids.
Good point, Nick.
You're not going to capture children to watch this movie like Jurassic Park and Star Wars did and Lord
It's too
of the Rings
slow
did.
for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's too deep and too slow.
Yeah,
and
it's much more of an adult movie.
Yeah.
My kind of movie.
It'll have a cult following. I'll say that.
Okay.
It'll become one of those
strong cult following.
Yes,
it's
it'll have a very strong cult following.
It very well may be the best movie. They're 100% going to win Oscars for sound design and special effects and everything like that. I don't think they'll get any acting awards, but I mean, they'll probably get nominated for best movie just because the Oscars need some more popular movies, so people start watching again.
Or best director or something like that.
I was going to say I've been cursed going to the movies for our podcast because I think every movie I went to at the theater last year for our podcast, I was disappointed by, except Insidious Part 5 was okay. But this was finally finally, I went to the movies and I'm dying to talk about this film. Yeah, it was everything we saw was like a letdown in some way. The Flash, the Dracula movie on a ship.
Yeah,
Last Voyage of the Demeter was like, oh man.
Yeah, they all had good and bad parts. This was done well. Yeah. And it didn't jump too much. Like, and again, I don't want to take away from the 84 version, but it's like, I'm the prince. 20 minutes later, oh, my dad died. 20 minutes later, now I'm the best really awesome person. And it was just quick, where this one, part 2 of this movie, which was the second half of the 84 version, was longer than the original 84 entire movie. So it wasn't as quick, but it wasn't that slow either. It was like, boom, we're here, boom, we're here, boom, we're here. They told that story well. Again, you're talking about many years that this part 2, many years went throughout this movie, and they told the story well, where you could keep up with it and realize, oh, now we're a couple years down the line, or oh, this happened, or so.
Well, we haven't talked much about the villains, but the Baron and Fade, man, they were. It kind of sucks that they died in this film, but because they were creepy and scary, and we don't know a lot about them, so maybe they weren't super developed, but every time they were on screen, I was interested because they had a scary, villainous presence.
Yeah, in the 84 version, I mean, they don't do much in that one either. But that was my most disappointing part of this movie. Was, you've got, Batista there, and his first scene, he's bashing this dude's head into the console because, and he didn't do anything. Like nothing. He shows up he gets killed easily.
That part did bother me a little.
That bothered me. The fight sequence at the end with Elvis was decent, but you're preparing for this huge battle, and they show the landscape of all these soldiers, right? And the battle lasts 5 minutes. Like in 5 minutes, they've already inside the throne room. And I'm like, how about if we're going to make a 2 hour and 45-minute movie? Can we make that maybe the last half hour instead of just establishing shots of sand? We've seen it. You know what I mean? That was the issue that I had with this. Let's just get to it.
Yeah.
Show me something.
Unfortunately, Hollywood hasn't figured out how to make movie money on TV or streaming services, because again, as I grow, I've always loved movies, but now I'm to the point where it's like, I don't know if I really want to watch movies anymore. I want to watch series. If they would take this Dune book and do what they did with Game of Thrones,
really good,
then that would be amazing. And we
would know the villains better.
Yes. Yeah. And the years that this takes, Game of Thrones, that story goes over many years, and maybe not with some of the other characters, but like the two daughters and the kids, basically the Stark kids, you watch them grow up. I mean, Sansa Stark was like 15 years old when she started in that movie, and then when the show ended, she was in her mid-20s, and you saw her grow from this shy little teenager to this amazing leader up here. And even whatever your opinions are about the last season, they got to tell that story. Again, we're getting so much information that's stuffed into 2.5 hours of movies, where it's like, if you would have taken part 1 and split that up into a 5-hour miniseries, and part 2 do that again, there's just, I think they could tell these stories better. And like Fade Ratha and Baron, you could have longer scenes with them and get to know them better. And because, again, like you said, they were amazing. I mean, I know this Austin Butler kid was nominated for Elvis, and I haven't seen Elvis yet. I don't know if I've seen anything with him in it besides this, and he was amazing. I mean, he was just awesome, but he was in there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then it was like, oh, he's dead.
Yeah,
it's like, I would have loved to see him through an entire season of
yes, I would
something
too.
like that. I mean,
so when you have these characters and you
cool.
don't establish them, it really doesn't leave an impact. When like Batista gets killed, you're like, oh, okay, well,
yeah.
He looked like he could have been tough, but I guess I'll never know. Yeah. It's the same thing like with what Star Wars did with like this Captain Phasma. They make her look so awesome, and then she does absolutely nothing in 2 movies. She gets killed twice. So it's like, why are you? If you're going to establish this character and make him tough, then I think they should give me a reason to fear them. Give me a reason to be scared for our hero when he has to go up against him.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fight that I can't remember the names, but Elvis had when he's in the arena and he's fighting the 3. 2 of them were drugged.
The gladiator match?
Yeah. 2 of them were drugged. He was going to kill him. And the other guy's been starved and beaten. So it's like, oh, you're supposed to be this great warrior, but yet you have to fight somebody who's drugged up. So again, you're not that threatening to me. I'm not seeing it. So give me something to make me understand how scary this guy actually is.
I can understand that. I could see it from his presence and just how like disturbed he was.
Oh yeah, he was a nut, so he was disturbing. Yeah, but at the same time, though, it's like I want to see him, and I know they're going by the book, so they have to do what the book says. But
that might be part of the problem,
right? But take a little bit of liberty there and say, you know what? I'm going to give before Batista's character actually dies, I'm going to give him I'm going to make him have a good fight, or this whole army that we're supposed to be scared of, put up a fight. Don't just let these nomads just walk right into your throne room, really? Yeah. So that was my, okay.
I was very curious when I was watching the movie about why the Harkonnen gladiator match was in black and white. I did send you guys an article. Did you ever see it? The director talked about why.
I did not get a chance to open that up, but
basically he was trying to display how like detached and cold the Harkonnens were, and they were supposed to be like they're in this like fake plastic world. And so that's why they showed that match in black and white, to try to artistically show that they're very cold and kind of detached from humanity. So it was interesting. I didn't understand it at the time, but I knew it must mean something, but it sure looked cool.
Yeah. I was kind of the same way. I was like, yeah, this looks neat. I didn't understand why they were doing it. I figured it was some artsy thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was thinking, but it looked cool.
In hindsight, I like it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
But yeah,
should
have made a mini series out of this. But
I would watch it.
I definitely recommend the movies too.
And you might be surprised. I would recommend watching it also.
Yes.
I'm not,
Yes.
yeah, again, I'm not saying that it was a bad movie by any means. I would recommend watching it. I think you could be entertained with it. I think it's a really beautiful movie to look at. And the performances were good. I mean, I really can't find anything really to complain about too much, except for lack of action, maybe.
And keep in
some
mind, we
parts
grew
drug
up,
on a little long, but
we grew up with movies that were like, here's your character. Oh, something bad happened. Action, go. And then it's
Right.
action throughout the entire movie.
Right.
We didn't watch movies with stories growing up in the 80s. We
No.
watched movies with blow stuff up,
Yeah.
blow stuff up. Let's go. Punch, kick. And when it came to the more story driven things, we watched more TV shows and things like that. So again, they did the best they could with this story in 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I would recommend watching it. And I usually have no problem sitting through a long movie. I can sit through Gone with the Wind, and it's almost 4 hours long, and I can sit through that in one setting. I can sit through Dances with Wolves. That was 3 hours long. I mean, long movies don't bother me if I'm continually something's happening here. And this one I felt at times was like, okay, this scene could have been wrapped up by now. We can move this a little quicker. But definitely, I would recommend watching it. I think for the most part, you'll be entertained with it.
Yeah,
And that's all I
And
got to say about
I'm sure
that.
there's no suspense about where I'm going to go for.
You loved
Nathan
it.
didn't like it.
I thought it was pretty astonishing. I left the movie feeling like, what did I just watch? Like, did I just travel to another world? So, from the perspective of somebody who is in a leadership position, it was really interesting. The film embodied like the terrible conundrums that leaders get put in. So I thought that was fascinating. If you enjoy studying religions, if you read the Bible, you'll probably find this interesting. There are a lot of reasons to like it. If you don't like slow movies, you may not. But it is funny. I told my wife, I said, I really want to know if Doug and Drew are going to like this movie because they grew up on 80s movies. She's like, oh, yeah. So, yeah, it was more of a fun type of, even music in the 80s was more fun, So I am curious to see if I'll like the 1984 Dune, which we'll be talking about 1 week from today. So March 11th, 8:30 p.m. Central. Hop online. We're going to be live. You can join us. Watch the movie before then. Throw some comments in the comments on the live stream, and we'll throw them on screen. Talk about them. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Cool.
All right.
Is that about it?
That's all I got.
Good, because I got to pee.
Yeah, I really have to pee too.
Thank
Hit
you,
the
guys.
end button so we can get out of here.
We'll see you guys later.
Later, guys.
Later.